Hey everybody, it's Bruce here with Traveling with Bruce. How you doing today? Today's video is all about Nassau in the Bahamas, one of the most dangerous cruise ports in the world, and how they're trying to turn it around. And the Cayman Islands, news out of the Caymans, what's been happening there. Thank you for joining my channel, Traveling with Bruce. I love the fact that you're subscribing to my channel, giving my videos thumbs ups, letting me know your comments. Also, thanks all of you who are joining my Facebook group page and following me on Instagram. Really love the fact you're doing that. For those of you out there who are social distancing, I want to let you know you can now get your hands on Traveling with Bruce masks to guard against the virus, and also, of course, as always, T-shirts, coffee mugs, and anything else you can think of, with about 35 different Traveling with Bruce logos available. Check the link down below this video for my RedBubble store and shop until you drop. It's kind of neat to see how many people picking stuff up with TWB on it. Today I want to talk to you about Nassau. Nassau, Bahamas has been ranked one of the most dangerous cruise ports in the world for a number of years. Unfortunately, downtown Nassau has just not been a fun place for cruise passengers to visit over the last number of years. There have been hold-ups, there have been purse snatchings, there have been assaults, but I've got good news. The good news is that in the last little while, even though 25% of cruise passengers don't even get off ships in Nassau, and the cruise lines have been issuing warnings in the past, U.S. government's been issuing travel advisory warnings, the government of the Bahamas and the wonderful people of the Bahamas, they are turning it around. While we are battling the virus and watching for that, the folks in Nassau are busy getting a brand new port facility built. It's going to take a couple of years to get it done, but a $250 million investment is being made between the government of the Bahamas and Port Holdings International to redesign the entire cruise port area that the visitor is going to experience going forward. The ships conveniently come right into the heart of downtown Nassau, and generally speaking, you can walk off the ship and go right through to the street level. The problem is you have had to walk through the gauntlet lately in the past number of years. A lot of vendors there who are allowed to be there, and a lot of vendors who are not supposed to be there, and a lot of entrepreneurial individuals who have no business being there, but they're there anyway. And some are giving some of these visitors a hard time. And so the city of Nassau, the government of the Bahamas, they want to make massive improvements to the port facility and have contracted out with Port Holdings International to do so. The bad news, unfortunately, has just been coming out in the last week or two. Because of the virus and the downturn in the economy, the Bahamas are doing what everyone else is doing, obviously. They have shut off travel in and out of the country, just like America and Canada has, and all kinds of other countries, obviously. But the cost of capital has gone up for the Bahamas government to now borrow money on the international bond markets. It used to run more in the 4, 5, 6% range for interest rates. Now they are paying upwards of 8% interest for bonds that are guaranteed by the Nassau government. And this is unfortunate, because when you're talking about a project like this $250 million port facility, a good chunk of that money has to be borrowed, a high amount. And if you're talking about, say, $200 million in borrowings at 8%, you're now talking about $16 million a year in interest just to carry this. Now, the game plan had always been that to pay for the vast majority of the $250 million cost of this port facility, the government of the Bahamas would have a per-person port fee added to every ticket of a cruise passenger coming to the country. For 2019, the port charge per person used to be $4 each. Then for 2020, for this full year, the proposal was that everyone would be charged $5.50 per visit. And then for next year in 2021, the proposal was that that price would go up to $8.50 a person, because by 2021, most of this work would be done and the passengers would see what they're getting for their money. After 2021, the thought was that the port charges will go up every year, but only for the amount of the inflation rate. So if inflation went up at 3% and you were paying $8.50 last year, this year it might go up, say, 30 cents a person, something like that. With the pandemic doing what it's doing and everything delayed and now interest rates going up, the government of the Bahamas may have to amend these numbers a little bit and adjust these port charges. But we'll have to see how that goes when we reopen. We don't know when that will be. In the meantime, while all this is going on, Royal Caribbean, Carnival, Disney are all spending money, or had been spending money and proposing to spend money to enhance and upgrade other areas of the Bahamas to give these cruise lines additional ports where they could send ships going forward in the future. Here's an artist rendition here of a project that's been worked on, or had been worked on. This is a massive multi-$100 million facility being completely upgraded with day visits and water parks and all kinds of activities with its own pier for Royal Caribbean and Celebrity. The folks over at Disney, they are building out, want to build out a $400 million additional a landing site for their ships going forward so that it can add to Castaway Cay. You can see here by the map the list of all the other islands and private destinations that are already in existence. Ocean Cay from MSC, Coco Cay, Royal Caribbean. The Carnival wants to put a private beach in Grand Bahama, Castaway Cay for Disney, Grape Stirred Cay for Norwegian, Princess Cay, and Half Moon Cay. They're already there. They're constantly being upgraded. They're constantly being modernized. And so the Bahamas are, in effect, in competition with the very cruise lines that come to right into downtown Nassau with cruise ship passengers. And if they were not going to improve Nassau, which has this reputation and issues with crime, they were going to lose more passengers out of Nassau to these private facilities over here. And the government of the Bahamas obviously wants to win on all fronts. So kudos to the Bahamian people and to the leaders of the Bahamas. They are spending a lot of money in downtown Nassau to really improve the facility. It looks like it's going to be a fabulous spot when it's all said and done. The hope is that the virus doesn't delay things too much and that the build-out will take place and will come through. By the way, one other note that I'll mention. The Bahamas not only have to worry about the islands, their private islands that they're operating with these other cruise lines for competition for Nassau. Nassau has also got to worry about the rest of the Caribbean as competition. As you, if you've cruised before, you know that if you've been to a Caribbean cruise, you've probably visited places like St. Thomas or Saint Martin, the Cayman Islands, perhaps Labadee and Haiti. These are areas here that have done extremely well. The Cayman Islands, as I can tell you shortly, they are really booming and have been booming. St. Thomas's numbers are good. St. Martin numbers are good. And here's the difference. If a tourist from a cruise ship goes to St. Martin, the average cruise ship passenger going to St. Martin spends $190 on their visit because of all the different tours you can take and all the different activities you can do and the safety of the area. Whereas if you're a typical passenger going to Nassau, the odds are you're only spending about $90 per person. And these, again, are people who are taking tours right from the ships in downtown Nassau. They're not just, idly walking through downtown. Too dangerous. The government of the Bahamas are trying to find a way with this new port facility to get tourists to spend more money in Nassau. If they can get the numbers up to the $190 mark, equal to what San Martin is doing, the thinking here is that that'll mean a $400 million per year cash injection, additional cash injection into the Nassau area. And this is a huge amount of money for a small population. It would make such a difference. It would take a lot of people off of the desperado area and put them into the employed area. And that is the secret to success. If you want to have fewer cruise ship passengers be accosted by desperate people, have them working. If they're making a living and can support their families, they're not going to take the time to accost cruise ship passengers. So this is some of the numbers and some of the factors going into why Nassau is taking so much effort and putting so much money into their downtown area to improve it and make the experience that much better. I mean, here's a photo here of the new zip line ride that was just installed last year in Saint Martin. To give you an idea, I mean, 4 at a time can take this ride. You get a wonderful gondola ride all the way up to the top of this beautiful area where you can take just a ton of videos and photos and get a spectacular view. And then you get this incredible ride all the way down. Is it any wonder why Saint Martin is such a popular place among a certain group of cruisers? Even for the younger crowd, this is what you want to be doing. It is a good time. Alrighty, well, there's the story on the Bahamas. They've come a long way. They got a ways to go, and they're on it, and I wish them nothing but the best. I think it's going to be fantastic. Now, the other news today is all about the Cayman Islands. Our friends at the Cayman Islands, and just so you know, I used to live there at one time. I was there with my family for a couple of years, and when I lived in the Cayman Islands in 1999 and 2000 range, there were about 35,000 people living on the islands, and many, many thousands were coming in for visits to the resorts and via cruise ship. But in those days, cruise ships would hold 2,000 to 3,000 passengers each, and there would be maybe 2 or 3 a day coming into port. And, we'd have maybe 5 to 7, 8,000 passengers a day getting off of cruise ships to visit the island. And even back then, those of us who lived there full time and had to commute to work in the morning and get our kids to school and then do the reverse in the afternoon, we were complaining about the traffic through downtown Georgetown. It was inconvenient with the tenders and all these thousands of people and all the buses and taxi cabs and folks wandering the streets. It was hectic. Fast forward to 2019, the beginning of this year, there are now 4, 5, sometimes 7 ships a day that had been coming into Georgetown. And cruise ships today are usually holding between 2,500 and 6,000 passengers each. Now, none of these Oasis-class ships have been visiting Georgetown and the Cayman Islands so far. They don't want to tender people in off of those ships. But the Bliss from Norwegian had been visiting here, and the Bliss holds 4,000, 4,500, and other ships were holding vast numbers of tourists. I visited the Caymans a number of years ago on the Norwegian Epic, and we had almost 4,000 people on board that ship. Very hectic. As a cruise ship passenger, I found it very hectic as well because there was traffic everywhere. Thankfully, I knew where I was going with Jennifer. We having lived there, we knew the area very well. But I looked around and saw a lot of people wondering, where are we going? What should we do? The tours were everywhere. The commotion was everywhere. And nowadays, instead of having, as I say, 8,000, 10,000 people a day, there had been upwards of 15,000 to 17,000 people a day coming in. Now, the islands of the Caymans, the government of the Cayman Islands, want to build a brand new port facility downtown. They want ships to be able to dock and tie up and moor up so that passengers can walk on and off the ship at their leisure rather than tendering in. The hope was that the docks would be so large that Oasis-class ships could be handled and any other large ships going forward could be easily accommodated. And the thinking was that the islands would start handling 20,000 to 25,000 passengers per day off of these new facilities. Problem, of course, is you can allow 25,000 people off the ships by having these ships dock. The problem is, how do you get them from downtown to where they have to go? Because these roads can't be expanded upon. You're not going to be able to build expressways through downtown Georgetown. If anyone's been there, you know what I'm talking about. There are twisty, windy, small little roads down there that barely handle 2 cars, one going each direction. pretty impossible to envision that kind of thing. Anyway, a lot of the regulars and the folks who live there year-round, they reacted very negatively to the news that the government had been conducting secret discussions with the cruise lines, and private bidding processes were being done, and the public was not being consulted as to what was going on. And the next thing you know, the government is announcing a $200 to $300 million massive facility being built right into their waterway, ripping out all kinds of coral reefs. I mean, the reaction was swift and negative. And a bunch of citizens got together and decided to hold a plebiscite, get a petition together, and have a national referendum on this project, which is allowed under the Cayman Constitution. Government was fighting it every step of the way, but the public were able to pass the referendum, and they had enough official signatures to conduct the referendum. Except that by the time that happened, the courts were already filled with cases of people fighting this project, and the referendum people joined one of the court cases to fight for to even stop this thing from happening. And wouldn't you know it, the Superior Court, the court of the land, blocked the legislation and blocked the project from going ahead. And the referendum, which was going to be held, now had been postponed and has now been canceled because the project is canceled for the duration of the current government in office. And so good news is that the project is dead. Bad news is that the project could still come back. My personal opinion had always been, why not reduce the number of passengers coming in to the islands rather than increase the number, and just double or triple the port fees for passengers to come in? Because when I used to live there with 8,000 people a day coming in, that was already practically too many people a day. But if you allowed 8,000 to 10,000 people a day in now instead of 20,000 to 25,000, you could double or triple the port fees. And I can tell you that as a passenger, it would still be a very, very pleasurable experience to not have to hang around with 25,000 others in a cramped, tiny downtown area where traffic just can't handle that kind of population increase. Remember, today, just so you know, there are 65,000 people living on the island now. I was there in 99, 2000, there were 35,000. The island is already overpopulated as it is. You add 25,000 people a day visiting the island on a daily basis for 8 hours at a time, you're now talking about 90,000 people on an island that really shouldn't have more than 40,000 people on it. This is really putting the boots to the infrastructure and the ecology. It's just not the way to go. As I speak to you today, of course, the virus has taken hold of everything. The Cayman Islands has been shut down completely. There are no cruise ships going to the island. No airlines are allowed in or out of the Caymans. There are no flights for tourism right now. There is no tourism of any kind. The island is on a national lockdown. The island of Little Cayman Island has been allowed to reopen just in the past week because they have no virus cases there anymore. But on this island, the big island, they're still on lockdown. They're still dealing with about 80 to 100 cases, and they want to get over that before they reopen the island. But there will not be any cruise ships coming to this island or any airlines allowed in until at least September. And the thinking here is there may not be cruises for the rest of this year because, again, with 4,000 passengers per ship, how do you know that every single person getting off that ship does not have the virus? It's an unknown until there's a vaccine, and so the Caymans may be restricted to cruise ship passengers for quite some time going forward. Anyway, there you have it. 2 stories about 2 unique places in the Caribbean, places we love to travel to. The Bahamas and the Cayman Islands. I hope you found this information useful, not too boring. Thank you for joining me today and for all your support. Don't forget to get your COVID masks from TWB. Check the link down below for the RedBubble Store. In the meantime, folks, stay warm, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll talk to you next time, everybody. Bye for now.